So we'll get started. And yes, it is the end of the holidays. The holidays are over, and they bring us back to the beginning, to Bereshit, which is the Torah portion for this week coming up. And so why don't we both physically and metaphorically take a couple of big deep breaths after the busyness of the holiday, and we can settle into our session, some relaxation. So, as I said, we're going to focus on Bereshit today, and Bereshit is packed full of all sorts of juicy stuff. It has two separate creation myths. Begins with the 7 days of creation, and then comes the story of Adam and Eve, which is a creation story from a separate tradition, although we usually just read through them as if they were actually consistent. but that's a story for another day. Then we have the tragic fratricide of Cain and Abel. And less familiarly, the Parsha ends with the first references to prayer, which comes some 235 years after the expulsion from the garden, according to the genealogy. But today, I just want to focus on the beginning of the beginning, which is verse 1. In the beginning of God's creation of the heavens and the earth being unformed and void, with darkness over the surface of the deep, and a wind from God sweeping over the water, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from darkness. God called the light day and the darkness night, the first day. Now, the mysteriousness of this first verse is pretty evident on its surface. I'm going to tell you this is a true story. My now 35-year-old son, Max, when he was 3 or 4, came home from preschool one day and said to me, "Who is this God guy that the kids are talking about in preschool? Everyone was talking about God, and I don't know who God is." And I said, "Well, here's what we'll do. We'll start out with the story. This is one of the most famous stories about God." And so I read him the first part of Bereshit about the creation of the world. And he said, "So let me understand, is God stronger than Superman?" And I said, "Yes, Max, according to this story, God has created everything. And so, yes, God is stronger than Superman in this story." And he said, "So who created God?" And I said, "That's a really good question. And we'll talk about that some other day." But it wasn't hard for a 3 or 4-year-old to see that there's some big missing pieces in this story. It's called the beginning, but God is already there. So is the earth, even if it's unformed. And why start with light? Max didn't ask about this, but what is it about light? I suppose for the story to work, it's necessary to have light first, because you can't be 7 days long unless you have some light to get 7 days. But that's a very circular answer. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about the development of this idea. Bereshit, the first verse of Bereshit, was apparently also not satisfying to the Kabbalists of the Middle Ages. They came up with an elaboration on the creation myth that doesn't answer the Max's question of who created God. But it does go to great lengths to fill in the details and sheds very much light on the importance of divine light, which is really the subject of that I'm going to talk about today. But before I go to the myth itself, I'm going to provide a little bit of context because the whole subject of the Kabbalah is confusing to many modern Jews. And I want to make sure we have this in the right context. Kabbalah refers to the mystical and esoteric traditions of Judaism. And these traditions go way back to ancient times. Kabbalah got, as it were, a new lease on life in the world of medieval Jewish philosophy with the publication of the Zohar around 1300 and the insights of Isaac Luria in the mid-1500s with the group of rabbis who were in Savat in Israel after the expulsion from Spain. So in his guide to the Zohar, Rabbi Arthur Green, who's the former head of the Reconstructionist Seminary, explains that the flourishing of mysticism was at this time was an aspect of, quote, the cosmic spirituality of that age generally, which saw philosophic, scientific, and religious knowledge as belonging to a single whole, and speculation on the origin and nature of the cosmos as essential to the quest for wisdom and truth. Specifically, the medieval Kabbalists were reacting negatively to the abstract and logical principles relied on by Maimonides and others to address these cosmic issues. The Kabbalists wanted to preserve the rabbinic tradition and affirmed a willful creation for the sake of Israel and the souls of the righteous. And they turned to fragmentary cosmological myths found in ancient sources to do this and to create their myth. So as an aside, before we turn to the myth, I do want to note that it seems remarkable to me that the Kabbalists created new and lasting myths as a way to fight philosophical reasoning. As those of you who were online when I led the meditation session over the summer may remember, I'm fascinated with the lasting power of ritual and myth in our modern religious life. However rational we may be to outward appearances, our capacity to engage with myth, even new myths, seems to be an undiminished aspect of our humanity. In any event, while the motives and beliefs of the medieval Kabbalists are esoteric, the Lurianic creation myth is more familiar. It begins with Ein Sof, the infinite power of God. One commentator described Ein Sof as, quote, both perfectly simple and infinitely complex, nothing and everything, hidden and revealed, reality and illusion, creator of man and created by man, close quote. Now, that clears it up. In any event, in Isaac Luria's telling, the Ein Sof creates the world by contracting itself to make a void that allows for the development of primordial Adam, who then emanates the 10 Sephirot, or holy qualities. The Sephirot formed into crystals to contain the emanations of light for the Ein Sof. However, the 10 vessels that were originally meant to contain the emanation of God's light were unable to contain it, and they shattered. The broken vessels tumbled down through the metaphysical void, trapping within themselves sparks of the emanated divine light. The primordial Adam was himself partly shattered into a multitude of individual souls who themselves are composed of the same fragments that form our world. So, the task of individual men and women is to extract those sparks that are his or her fortune to encounter in life and raise and spiritualize them, so as to reconstitute this Sephirot. So as one travels along one's life path, according to the Lurianic tradition, and this has been continued over in modern Hasidic theology, one encounters the persons, events, and things that contains sparks that he or she is uniquely suited to redeem. Likewise, the objects and people that an individual encounters are potentially suited to assist that individual in raising the sparks within his or her own soul. Each encounter and each life event is an opportunity to raise a spark of holy light or plunge the world even further into darkness. The raising of the sparks is the vehicle for tikkun olam, the restoration of the world. The ideal of a restored and redeemed world, which overcomes chaos and evil, gives meaning to that which is senseless, and has the potential to bring the completion of Ein Sof, the infinite God. For Luria, divinity, Ein Sof, is completed only through the restorative acts of humankind. The idea that our purpose is to seek and raise out the divine sparks of light around us strikes a powerful chord with me. I mentioned before that my eclectic religious background included my father, who was a Quaker, and that I was a practicing Quaker for several years during my adolescence. One of the core beliefs of the Quakers is that all people contain an inner light, that of God in every man. The search for godliness and truth of light in oneself and others is thus a primary task of the Quaker religion as well. So I hope we're going to do a meditation today that focuses on divine light. And we'll do it in the spirit of the mystics and see how it goes. Before we do the meditation, I'm going to read a short poem by Alden Solovi. And the divine light meditation that we're going to do is from Nan Frank's Discovering Jewish Meditation. And then I'll close with another poem. As always, if the meditation isn't working for you, feel free to turn to a meditation of your own choosing. And last week we did a little bit longer silence than we have in the past, and there was some indication that people like that. So we'll probably try that again. We'll do maybe 10 or 12 minutes of silence, which is hopefully you won't have too much trouble with that, but you can let your mind wander if you are tired of trying to bring it back to meditation, and we'll get more. We can talk about that at the end. So let's take a few deep breaths and settle into our chairs, and then I will read the poem about the light. Light overflowing. The light in me sees the light in you, is the light of God. Oh, brilliance, sparkling from your eyes, radiating from your chest. Oh, wonder, shining around us, shimmering with amazement. Oh, glory, overflowing my heart, touching your soul. The light of God sees the light in you, is in the light in you. So once again, let's take a few deep breaths. Slow, deep breaths, making a sound with each exhalation. Now, begin to breathe regularly. Breathe in, breathe out. With each inhalation, receive the light of the divine. Experience its beauty and boundless strength, its color, its warmth, its radiance, its cascading creative energy. With each breath in, the light of the divine fills you. It gives you a feeling of well-being, clarity, strength. With each exaltation, the light of the divine passes through you, healing you, cleansing you, releasing the toxins of your everyday life. With each in-breath, receiving the presence of divine light. With each out-breath, experiencing the gift of divine light. When your thoughts wander, as they inevitably will, gently encircle them with light and return to the focus of the meditation. Breathe in, breathe out. Divine light, God's presence. So we can begin to come back to the room. Take your time. I'll read the poem that I described before. Secret light. The light of God is not well hidden, not so secret that we must battle the forces of nature or armies of evil to stand in its glow. It's there behind your eyes, pulsing from the hills, rising from the sands. It's there inside a spade of dirt, inside the caper bud and the orchid blossom. In the old folks and the little ones, the light of God is not well hidden. Far enough that you must begin the journey, close enough that you will surely find it. And now I'm going to turn the recording off, and we can check in.